The heavy rainfall and flooding in South Carolina in October of 2015 damaged thousands of homes and impacted thousands of lives. State and federal governments are responding to help citizens recover and rebuild. We'd like to take a few minutes in this special broadcast to cover some of the basics of the relief programs that are currently available. My name is Tucker Mitchell. I'm with Francis Marion University, and I'll be the moderator for this program. Joining us is Mike Wade, an External Affairs Officer with FEMA, and Adrian Leneve, Public Affairs Specialist with the Small Business Administration, Office of Disaster Assistance. Mike, Adrian, welcome.
Thank you.
Mike, let's begin with some of the basics. Could you just give us kind of an overview of federal assistance program for this flooding?
Well, let's just start with basically what we're trying to tell people, if they have occurred any damage to their home, whether they're owner or renter, to apply for assistance through our 800 number, which is 1-800-621-3362. And that process will take them probably 15 or 20 minutes to actually register and get a registration number that will be very important to them to carry forward for their relief efforts. And once they get through that initial process, they'll be asked their name, the address of where the damage occurred. They'll be asked their Social Security number, and they will be asked for the names of any other people that reside in the household. So we look at households, not necessarily individuals. So once they get through that process, then within 5 to 7 days, they will get a phone call from one of our inspectors to come and verify the losses that they sustained. And one important thing about that is that our inspectors, one, all wear federal IDs, and two, they do not ask for any money. So we've heard that in the past where people have come in and said they work for us and asking for money. So if they ask for money, call your local authorities.
Okay.
Good. He will make a determination. He will actually write up and send a report in to our processing center. And based on what that individual that registered told us and what the inspector saw during his inspection, there will be a determination made as to what assistance may be available to that household. It could be rental assistance, maybe their house is not habitable. So our goal is to make homes safe and sanitary so that they can be lived in while they're being repaired. So if it's not livable, then they may very well be eligible for up to 2 months of rental assistance to live somewhere else while their home is being repaired. Same with a renter. A renter is in the same category as a owner. The only difference is we only can replace household personal items. They're not eligible for any repairs to that structure that they're actually renting. So they will, after that inspection, then they will receive a letter from us that outlines what assistance may be available to them. That letter may also ask them for additional information. In that letter, they may very well be referred over to the Small Business Administration for a loan. And I'll let Adrian speak to the loan process. But the key thing is that any information that we're seeking or anything that we're asking that survivor to do, it's important that they provide us that information that we're asking for so that we can continue to process and get them the assistance that they need.
So these two processes really work together, the FEMA process as well as with the SBA.
That's correct.
So Adrian, tell us a little bit about the SBA process and where does that kick in and what's that like for a homeowner?
Well, the SBA is here because second to insurance, the SBA is your primary way for homeowners, renters, businesses, and nonprofits to do that long-term recovery. So often when somebody is referred to the SBA, we do a loan evaluation to see if we can help them with that loan. Homeowners, they can receive up to $200,000 with an interest rate which can be as low as 1.875% for terms up to 30 years. That's a fixed rate loan to help them in rebuilding or repairing the property that was damaged. Renters, they can get up to $40,000 with an interest rate which can also be as low as 1.875% for terms up to 30 years. again, to help repair or replace their damaged personal property. And very important to note, personal property can also include vehicles that were damaged, which we had a lot of happen around here. But more importantly is that as part of the process and as a federal partner in this recovery effort, we're going to look and see if somebody honestly can handle a loan. If they can't, there's a third avenue of assistance that we will refer them back to FEMA for what they call other needs assistance. That's additional grant consideration, that's state aid, that's more things that they can be eligible for in under grant money than originally necessary. So we're part of the recovery process. So it's very important that even though people hear the word loan, they don't think they can handle it, please don't self-deny or self-decline or hold yourself out from your recovery. Let us go through that evaluation, and then if we can, we're going to get you over to FEMA for that additional avenue of assistance. So we're part of that process.
Gotcha. Well, so both of you, but Michael, I'll start with you on this. We want to be clear with this point for folks out there that are watching this. You may get a letter the first time that doesn't give you everything you were expecting or everything you thought you might be getting, but that isn't the end of the process.
No. If just say that they're denied any assistance at this time, it could be for several reasons. It could be that they told us they had insurance, and because we by law cannot duplicate benefits you receive from an insurance company, we have to have documentation from your insurance company telling us, one, either how much you were paid, or two, that you were denied any coverage. And so that could be very reason why they're denied. They may be denied for what we call insufficient damage to the dwelling. That does not mean that's the end. They have up to 60 days from the date of that letter to file a written appeal and provide us additional information as to why they disagree with what we have provided them. And it could be as simple as when the inspector came there, what he saw was entirely different than what occurred 2 days before. So, but the key thing is that don't not act on the information that we're requesting, because you're only basically telling us that you don't need any further assistance if you don't respond to us.
Adrian, I think you said something sort of similar about that. Don't self-deny. Don't fail to fill something out or fail to follow up because you maybe don't understand the program or don't see what the next step is as well.
That's correct. It's incredibly important that people, when they receive their eligibility letters, they read the entire letter. Oftentimes they'll see that you're ineligible at this time, but if they look farther down, it'll say you need to complete and return your loan application with the SBA. You've been referred to the SBA, again, as part of the process. Slightly different from FEMA is that while FEMA will have to wait in some cases for insurance to see what happens with that, with the SBA for homeowners and renters, even if you have insurance and you're still working with your insurance company, we can go ahead and provide you, if we approve you for a loan, we can provide you the working capital to get started on your repairs prior to you settling with your insurance company, because we will reach out and just take an assignment. So when and if the funds arrive, they'll just go to pay down your loan and you'll be responsible for the difference. That's a slight difference for our program, but again, then it comes back to basically you're being referred to us, we want to do an evaluation, and if we cannot offer you a loan, we're going to get you referred back to FEMA. So it's incredibly important. Don't just look at the top of the letter that you get. Read through it, follow the steps that it provides. And if you have any doubts or you're very confused or your questions or you just want somebody to help you, we have disaster recovery centers set up throughout the state, and that information, we have people, both FEMA and SBA, together so they can work with you all through the steps of the process right there, hold your hand, and that's what they're there to do to help you with.
And of course, they can find that out where those centers are on your website, and that'll be appearing on the screen periodically through the show.
Yes, okay. That's true.
Adrian, let me just ask a quick question to make sure that people aren't confused about this. So you're with the Small Business Administration, but we're talking about helping people in their homes.
That's correct. In disasters such as this, the Small Business Administration is activated. We're the Office of Disaster Assistance, so we're a little subgroup. And we're the ones that jump out and help those homeowners, those renters, the businesses, non-for-profits, which could include churches, or any organization of faith. So yeah, don't let the name fool you. We're out here to help everybody and anybody. And again, we get what we can to really assist those homeowners and those renters for that long-term recovery. FEMA, as Mike said, safe, secure, and sanitary, versus the SBA, we're a little bit larger amounts of money to be able to assist them. And again, if we can't, we can get them back to FEMA.
Okay. Mike, and again, folks out there sometimes view government as just government, and they don't make the delineations between agencies and even levels of government.
Right.
How is the federal aid tied, or is it tied to state aid and possibly even local agencies?
No, the federal aid for individuals in this instance is funded by the federal government. So any assistance they're getting is coming directly from the federal government. Now, you have a lot of state agencies, and I would be remiss in not telling people, if you have any unmet needs that you can't get from FEMA or SBA, then 211 in the state, you can call that number, and they have a whole host of nonprofits that are still here on the ground helping people recover from this disaster. So we look at it as a whole approach, a whole community approach. Not only includes the individual, but it also includes the state, local, and federal government. So it's a partnership among all of those. We're here at the request of the state. And everything that we do is at the request of the state. The county, they feed their needs up through the state, then come to us and see if we can assist. So everything it goes from the bottom up. Start with your local community and then go up from there. So, but one thing that we really need to get out there is that we're running short on time for people to register. December the 4th is currently the deadline for registering for assistance. So don't wait and say, well, I'll get around to it tomorrow the next day, because you know as well as I do, tomorrow the next day gets up on you pretty quick. Right. and then so after the 4th, they will not be eligible to apply for assistance. So that's why it's important for people to understand that if they sustain damage, and I'm going to reiterate the dates, from October 1st till October the 23rd is what we call an incident period as to what this declaration covers. I know we've had some recent rains over the last 8 or 9 days. Yesterday was a nice day for a change, but any of those damages that occurred after the 23rd are not part of this declaration. And the counties, the cities, and the state would have to start a new process and request another declaration for anything related to the damages that may have occurred from the flooding for the last week or so.
So just to be clear on that point, it's still possible that flood damage incurred after October 23rd could be covered, but that's going to be another process, and that hasn't been done yet.
That has not been done. I know that some of the counties have been doing what we call preliminary damage assessments, but that's at the local level at this point, from my understanding. But on the flip side, if you had damage that was sustained in the initial flooding, and then say the inspector came in and couldn't find it, and then all of a sudden now the water has risen back up again underneath your home, and now that same damage is seen again. So this goes back to the appeal process. You can go back to us and say, look, this is a continuing issue, and it started, on this date, say October the 15th, and so we're requesting that you come out and reevaluate, and then you provide us that information, and then we would send an inspector back out to verify that those damages have occurred, or continuing damages, not just from a separate incident.
Yeah. Mike or Agent, either one, speak a little bit to the type of damage that's covered. I mean, is it anything related to flood? I mean, you may not maybe not too much detail, but kind of give us some idea of what the scope is here.
Well, the damage has to have occurred to your primary residence. We do not provide assistance to second homes or rental property. The SBA would be glad to loan you some money for your rental property, but and it has to have occurred within that incident period, and it has to be a direct result of that disaster. So if, just say, your home was not in very good shape prior to the flood, then more than likely we're only going to basically may give you some money to make repairs just to keep it at whatever the level it was. That's what we look at. What's the level of standard at the day of the storm or the day the damage occurred? Anything that happened before that, we can't be responsible for. The individual has to be responsible for that. So, and that goes back to literally the most money that any individual or household can get from FEMA under this program is $33,000. So you see that we can't make people whole. We can only provide for their immediate needs to get them in their home where it's safe and sanitary. That is our goal. To long term, I tell people, look at us as your short-term remedies to make your home safe, sanitary, and secure, and then look to the SBA to get you that money that you need to bring your home back to the way it was the day of the storm.
And that's important, as Mike said. While FEMA was restricted to primary residents, if a secondary home, you owned a vacation home that you rented out, or you had maybe extended family living in there, it's possible for the SBA to step in and offer assistance in the form of our business loans because you generated income. The other thing to note is that businesses, even if you have a small business in your own home, that can also be covered. Our business loans are a little bit higher amounts. They can go up to $2 million for the physical damage to the property, as well as if it's a business you can have for inventory that was lost, or we offer what are called economic injury loans. Now, this is when a business may not have suffered direct damage, but it couldn't get to its customers. Your customers couldn't come to you. You couldn't get product, or you lost power, and so you had to throw away all of your food. Things like that. It's an economic injury. And we offer those working capital loans so that way you can pay your employees, pay your light bill, keep yourself above water to help you in that recovery. And again, that loan can be up to $2 million. The interest rate for businesses can be as low as 4% for terms, again, up to 30 years. So fixed rate loan to be able to get you the assistance that you need. So slightly a more long-term, slightly larger amounts to be able to really get what you need to do. Also, as I mentioned, nonprofits, including organizations of faith, we have special loans for them for the physical damage that occurred during the storm and during the incident period, as Mike stated. And the interest rate for those can be as low as 2.625% for terms up to 30 years. Again, this isn't free money. We understand that it is a loan, but with those interest rates, it's as close as we can get it to help them recover back to where they were at the time of the storm.
Adrian, what kind of time frame would folks be looking at for the SBA loan process?
We are under the same deadline as FEMA. It's the common deadline, so it's December 4th. We strongly encourage people to not hesitate and wait in your recovery, especially here in the South. You have mold, we've got Christmas, we got holidays coming up, at Thanksgiving and New Year's. All of this is coming up, and it's going to affect everything you're doing. So we strongly encourage people to get out, take advantage of the fact that we're here, we're at the recovery centers. You have a very short window. Start getting the help that you need. So that way, if you have to appeal or if you have to ask questions, we're here on the ground to be able to assist you, and you're not waiting and up to the last minute, and then maybe not having the resources to recover.
Gotcha. Well, so the December 4th deadline obviously is important. Mike, what kind of time frame? I know a lot of money's already been dispersed.
Yes. Literally, for the state, we've had over 83,000, a little over 83,000 households apply for assistance, and we have to date have provided over $60 million in assistance to households and renters. So
that money can get to you fairly quickly.
Yes, it can, and part of that registration process will ask the individual, do you want a check, or if you've got a banking information, you can have direct deposit. So obviously that's the quickest way that any assistance that comes from us would go directly from the Treasury to their banking account. So just something to think about. But here in Florence County alone, we've had over 5,000 households apply for assistance just in Florence County alone. So it's a big task, and you know, we've talked briefly about disaster recovery centers, and I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to call an 800 number and talk to somebody on the phone. And that's the purpose of our disaster recovery centers. We have one in Lake City here in Florence County, and they're open 6 days a week from 7 in the morning until 7 at night. So, and they can literally go in and sit down and talk with someone face to face. They can bring up their case information and tell them exactly what's going on with it. And if there's information that we need at that point, then they can provide it, or they can get it and bring it back, and we'll make sure it gets into their file. And as well as SBA being in those disaster recovery centers as well, where they can sit down and talk to one of their loan officers. So, and the good thing is that you can go to www.fema.gov, and you can literally find the closest disaster recovery center to you. You do not have to go to one that's in the county that you reside in. If there's one closer in Darlington or in Georgetown or wherever, you can go to any disaster recovery center and they can help you.
Okay. Good. Well, and the December 4th deadline obviously is critical. There's no relief for somebody that misses that.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Now, you know, the governor does have the, she can, based on whatever the government, the state thinks that they need, they can actually petition FEMA to extend that deadline, but that's entirely left up to the state.
Once somebody opens once somebody registers and has a file that's open, is there a need for them to track that, to follow the progress of that?
Yes, it is, and they can go online through disasterassistance.gov, which is all computer-based, and they can look up their file, or they can call the 800 number, 800-621-3362, and actually ask questions. And then the alternative is to go to a disaster recovery center. So we tell people that if you haven't heard from us, then you need to call and say, hey, what's going on?
Okay.
If they registered and hadn't seen an inspector, or they haven't gotten some assistance within 7 to 10 days usually, they ought to be calling and saying, hey, I haven't heard from anybody, what's going on? And their registration number is very important, because everything that they do, whether it be written or verbal, is going to have to be confirmed with that registration number before we will talk to them, because we want to make sure that we're talking to the person that actually registered. Mm-hmm. One other thing, you know, we've heard people mention that, well, I got a denial letter, I'm just going to reapply. Please don't reapply, appeal. Because if you reapply, now we have 2 files for the same address. And if you filed the second time and said, okay, I've got additional, they've told us something entirely, that file is really not even looked at. And the first file, which is the legitimate file that we are concerned with, doesn't get acted on until we can rectify what's going on while we have two registrations for the same address.
All right. So the real takeaway from this is you've got to get registered. You've got to get in the system and get that number and get this process started with FEMA, and then on to the SBA, and see how those two agencies work out for you, where the best source for you is.
Right.
Correct, and it's important to know, as Mike said, we're getting the help out there as fast as possible. FEMA's getting their teams in place, and they're getting the money out, and so is the SBA. As of this morning, we've approved over $59 million ourselves, and that's in addition to the grant money. That's loan money. So that's out there, that's working capital. And it should be, I should note that the first $25,000 of our loans is unsecured. I don't need a security interest. So I can get that money, if you're approved for a loan, I can get that money into your account within a few days. So we say, but by the time we've received all of your information, it's 7 to 10 business days, and we'll turn around and get the money out to you. We, as well as FEMA, the SBA does provide our own inspectors, so we don't rely on insurance companies. We will come out and basically capture the damage that happened. And like FEMA, our inspectors are identifiable with ID, with federal ID. So, and they never ask for money. They never make infield determinations. They're there to capture that information and send it back. But we strongly encourage people, please don't wait. Please just get the help, have the questions, complete the application, and get it back to us just as fast as possible so we can do an evaluation to see if, one, if we can offer you a loan, or two, if we can get you back in for other needs consideration, possible additional grants, or some other state and local aid. So register, complete your loan application, and get it back just as fast as you can. And if you have questions, go in. Disaster recovery centers are throughout the state. Please just walk in. If you see a sign, stop and walk in and ask. We're here to help.
Well, that's great advice, Mike. So one last time, just let everybody know again the 3 ways that you can get involved in this system and get registered.
Well, you can call our 800 number, 1-800-621-3362, or you can go online to disasterassistance.gov and apply through registering online. One of the other things that that I mentioned earlier about the 211 for the state, where people can go and find assistance for their unmet needs. This State Office of Emergency Management also has a website, which is basically scemd I believe it's org, and they have a whole page there of things that are available to the citizens of South Carolina and links to different organizations to help them.
So anything else folks should know? Any information we haven't covered this morning?
One of the things that people can do to help themselves is that they've had some damage to their home. And we offer a lot of information, as well as the state does, to mitigate a lot of the damages that may have occurred from this flooding. It could be as simple as elevating your air conditioner so that it's above any possible flooding so that it doesn't get flooded out. So we offer a lot of different inexpensive mitigation tips to try and get people to build back not only stronger but more resilient for any future disasters. So people need to think about that when they make their repairs. What can I do to make my home more resilient to future flooding or whatever disaster comes down the road? We're in South Carolina, as I live in Virginia, so we're susceptible to hurricanes, so that's another thing. All of those tips are available through FEMA.gov, as well as the state's website.
And the other thing to remember is that for homeowners, the SBA is also here to help with the funding for some of those projects. So while FEMA will give you tips, we can help provide the funding for them. For instance, we can actually increase the loan for a homeowner to be able to assist them in the mitigation project. They would just talk to their loan officer and say, hey, listen, in this case, I had maybe some sewer backup water, so I need to put in a sub pump, or I need to make it bigger or smaller. And while I'm doing my general repairs, I can do this for an slightly additional cost and be able to prevent this in the future. So again, it is that long-term recovery, thinking in the future, what can I do to prevent this same thing from happening? And if that means putting in sub pumps or putting in hurricane shelter or shutters or elevating washer, dryer, air conditioning, heating units, something like that, that's where we can offer some additional funding as well. So they just want to talk to the loan officer. But the most important part right now is to register, complete the application. You can do that 1-800-623-FEMA 3362. And you can do that disasterassistance.gov or by visiting one of the disaster recovery centers throughout the entire state of South Carolina. Again, we're on the ground, and please visit us. We're the ones in blue, dark blue and light blue. So visit, talk to all of us in that center, one-stop shop. Come in while we're here and on the ground, because we're not going to be here that long.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot, Adrian. Appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
Mike.
Let me bring up one other thing that people, I've heard at several community meetings about flood insurance. Yeah, a lot of people are being told that they're not eligible to either buy flood insurance or they don't need it. I tell people that think of it this way. If the water comes up, your homeowners is probably not going to cover that damage. If the water comes down, then you may be covered. But to make sure that you have the coverage that you need, and unfortunately we're all insurance poor, but it's important to think about that. Even if you don't live in a floodplain or you don't think that your home is susceptible to flooding, even if you don't, you can still buy flood insurance, and you can go to floodsmart.gov and put in your address and your zip code, and it'll actually give you an average of what your flood insurance may cost you, and it could be very inexpensive. And it will also give you a list of agents that are authorized to sell flood insurance. Not all insurance companies sell flood insurance, and not all agents sell flood insurance. So that is a good resource. And the fact that we've had flooding and a lot of people didn't have flood insurance because, hey, I've lived here 50 years and I've never flooded. But it's something to think about, and it's a good program that is backed by the federal government and managed by FEMA, to get them insurance that may help them in the future. And it can't help them right now because once they apply, there's actually a 30-day wait period before that policy actually goes into effect. So if you had damage now and you buy your flood insurance, it won't kick in for 30 days after you purchase it. So that's just a good reminder of people that you can get it. It's just a matter of going and looking for it.
Very good. Well, lots of great information about this. We've had a natural disaster here in South Carolina, but help is on the way. Look for the websites and telephone numbers to be on our screen, been on the screen throughout this show, and thanks for joining us today.